In April 1979, when the Uganda army was overwhelmed by a combination of Tanzania People's Defense Forces and Uganda rebel groups, Uganda emerged from a difficult political and economic situation. This political quagmire might have been rectified by a long-term government of national unity. Unfortunately, the country quickly plunged into a period of highly competitive and divisive politics. In January 1986, President Yoweri Museveni inherited a ruined country on the verge of economic collapse. Earlier, the National Resistance Army had worked out a 10-point program to form the basis for a coalition of political and social forces to usher in a new future for Ugandans.
For the first time, we are going to talk about the population, their life, their political rights, their economic interests. That will be the center of gravity of whatever we are doing.
Some of the 10 points were restoring democracy, providing security for all, elimination of all forms of sectarianism, defending and consolidating national independence, building an independent, integrated and self-sustaining national economy, restoration and improvement of social services, and elimination of corruption and misuse of power. The achievements Uganda has attained in Museveni's 34 years have been tremendous. Over 15 million children and young adults are in school today because access to education has been eased. Infrastructure development has also greatly improved. In 1986, Uganda had 987 kilometers of tarmac road. Today, there are 78,000 kilometers of tarmac, while the total road network has expanded to about 130,000 kilometers. Uganda's economy has grown from $1.5 billion in 1986 to $33 billion today. In January 1986, economic growth rate was at -3%, but in early 2020, before COVID-19 struck, the economy was growing by 6.3%, with the growth largely driven by the expansion of the service industry. President Museveni declared 2017 the year of mass industrialization, and by 2019, industrial growth was at 6.2%, largely driven by construction and mining. But for some people like Daniel Omara Atubo, a lawyer and politician who has known Museveni since 1969, the biggest achievement has been the all-encompassing 1995 constitution.
They did a wonderful job. They went into the details of what this country needed and what this country should be.
Since then, the country has had regular elections. This, coupled with the defeat of 28 rebel groups, has ensured that relative peace is one of Museveni's lasting legacies.
There should be no hidden agenda of what we are going to talk now.
However, there have also been missed opportunities, with the failure to eliminate systematic corruption being Museveni's greatest undoing. In a country where the national poverty level stands at 21.7%, while 69.4% of the population is on the verge of falling into poverty, unchecked corruption has led to the violation of the right to health, water, food, and good education. Israel Mayengo, who met Museveni at the Moshi Conference in Tanzania in 1979 and later became the vice president of the Uganda Patriotic Movement, which fronted Museveni in the December 1980 elections, says corruption was not as pronounced back then as it is in Museveni's government now.
It's very difficult now to say that any part of the government is without corruption. And it's going to be a war to get rid of it.
Museveni selectively fights corruption. When it is about his relatives and those who are loyal to him, he's not very bitter. He can forgive. It is only those whom he doesn't like that he can say.
I don't agree anyway that Museveni can fight. I'm sorry to say. I find it strange because this corruption has bloomed, has blossomed under the leadership of Museveni.
Over the years, Museveni has positioned Uganda as a guarantor of regional stability. We have fought wars and buttressed governments in Zaire and later the Democratic Republic of Congo, Central African Republic, South Sudan, Rwanda, Somalia, and Equatorial Guinea. These military adventures have raised Uganda's profile on the international stage. However, as a result, billions of unaccounted shillings have been poured into the defense sector, some say at the expense of national development.
And everybody knows that in the effort of defense in countries like ours, right in there, is a channel of corruption.
If you look at the level of development in Kenya and Tanzania, which have not involved themselves in either previous military coups or in regional conflicts, they are now a middle-income group. Yet at the time of independence, Uganda was far ahead of Kenya and Tanzania.
You go to migration, Amin. You go to registration of voters, Ndagamuntu, Amin. It is Amin. So basically, he has taken the country back, now openly, back to where it was in 1986. Amin is in charge.
34 years down the road, the army has never returned to the barracks. The Uganda People's Defense Forces, whether dressed up as policemen, security operatives, or more recently, LDUs, is conspicuous in the political space. With the veneer of his invincibility waning, perhaps the president's legacy has been the building of negative political competition against himself.
It is a fruition, it is a maturing of a dictatorship. It is sort of like the civilians are in charge, but all the time the high command decides finally. If there is something crucial, it is the high command which must endorse that.
If we want to have a truly national army, we have to find a way of disengaging the personality of President Museveni and his few generals who were in the bush from the army.
Point 3 of the 10-point program called for national unity and elimination of all forms of sectarianism. However, sectarianism is still a topic of public concern. Key appointments in strategic government departments and institutions drift towards the president's long-term cronies and associates. This has led to an equal distribution of wealth. Such is the inequality that the president addressed it recently.
There is wealth, but it's not well distributed. That must be solved.
Wafula Ogutu, a politician who has known Museveni since 1977 when they met in exile in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, says this government has been the most sectarian since independence.
His sectarianism is very subtle. He talks against it himself, but he practices. But if you now point out what he practices, he arrests you for being sectarian.
I don't blame Museveni for sectarianism for one reason. They made a constitution which permits the government, the president, to be sectarian. And he can easily, appoint people as they come close to him. If you and I try to see him, it will be very difficult, His fellows from Kumi try to see the president, they will have a lot of difficulty doing it.
Though some say sectarianism and patronage can ensure a leader's long stay in power, it is also equally true that a combination of the two can undermine a sitting government, leading to disaffection among those who feel marginalized. In 1986, many Ugandans hoped that within a few years they would witness a peaceful transfer of power. However, on September 27, 2017, the presidential age limit cap, the last constitutional safeguard against an open-ended presidency, was removed. This effectively laid the ground for a potential life presidency. With 34 years under his belt, President Museveni is Africa's 4th longest serving president. With the black spots and missed opportunities of his rule maybe threatening to overshadow his achievements. GILLIAN NANTUME, NTV.